Hi, I'm Claire. I'm 35 years old, and this is the story of how I did something I never thought I was capable of. I've been married to Ryan for 12 years. We have a beautiful son, Ethan, who means the world to me. Our lives were simple, routine, and for the most part, happy, or so I thought. Everything changed the day I met Miss Harris, Ethan's new teacher. She was warm, confident, and captivating. From the moment she introduced herself at the parent-teacher meeting, I felt an inexplicable pull toward her. At first, I chalked it up to admiration. She was everything I wasn't: vibrant, magnetic, and fearless. But as time went on, those feelings grew more intense, more confusing, and impossible to ignore. I began volunteering at Ethan's school more often, finding excuses to be around Miss Harris. We started chatting after class first about Ethan's progress, then about life, hobbies, and everything in between. She had this way of making me feel seen, like I wasn't just a wife or a mother, but Claire. One afternoon, after a school fundraiser, she invited me for coffee. I hesitated, but I couldn't say no. We sat in a small cafe, talking for hours. Her laughter was infectious, her gaze hypnotic, and when she reached across the table to touch my hand, a spark shot through me that I couldn't deny. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her, about how alive I felt when I was around her. The next week, she asked me to stay after a parent-teacher meeting. Her tone was casual, but her eyes said otherwise. Ryan and I were far from perfect, but we had built something stronger, a relationship forged in honesty. "I can't stop thinking about you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced. "I feel the same," I replied, my voice trembling. "But this is wrong." "Maybe," she said, stepping closer, "but sometimes the wrong things feel so right." Before I could respond, her lips were on mine, soft yet insistent. I didn't pull away. Instead, I gave in, letting the passion that had been building between us take over. That kiss was the beginning of something I couldn't control, something that would change everything. We started meeting in secret at coffee shops, in her classroom after hours, and eventually at her apartment. Each encounter was more intoxicating than the last. She awakened something in me I had long buried. But with every stolen moment came guilt. I was betraying Ryan, the father of my child. I told myself I would end it, but I had to end it. But every time I saw her, my resolve crumbled. Then one evening, as I returned home late, Ryan confronted me. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "And as long as you're willing to fight for it, to learn and adapt, you can create something truly extraordinary." He didn't believe me. "Claire, you've been different lately. What's going on?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. How could I explain what I couldn't even fully understand? Ryan's eyes searched mine, filled with worry and suspicion. "You can talk to me, Claire," he said softly. "I'm just overwhelmed," I finally said, forcing a smile. "With Ethan, the house, everything." He nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't believe me. The guilt inside me grew heavier. In that moment, I realized how far we had come. Our love had been tested in the harshest of ways, yet it endured. "This isn't fair to anyone," I said, tears welling up in my eyes. "Ryan doesn't deserve this." "Ethan doesn't deserve this?" Jessica's face fell, but she nodded. "I understand," she said quietly, "but you need to know something." She hesitated before continuing. "You've changed my life, Claire. I've never felt this way about anyone." Her words broke me. I wanted to walk away, but the pull between us was too strong. I couldn't say goodbye. Instead, I found myself in her arms again, her embrace both comforting and electric. That night, I made a choice. It wasn't the right choice, but it was the one I couldn't resist. It wasn't an overnight fix. Healing takes time, and trust takes even longer. But we were both willing to try. Each time I was with Jessica, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. But the guilt was always there, lurking. One evening, as Jessica and I sat in her apartment, she reached for my hand. "This can't go on forever," she said. She taught me something. I continued. She made me see the cracks in our relationship and in myself. She looked at me, her eyes filled with sadness. "You have to decide, Claire. You can't keep living like this." Her words haunted me as I drove home that night. I knew she was right, but the thought of losing her was unbearable. When I walked into the house, Ryan was waiting for me. "We need to talk," he said, his tone serious. My heart sank. "About what?" I asked, trying to sound calm. "About us," he replied. "About what's happening." I felt trapped, caught between two worlds. I knew the time for honesty had come, but I wasn't ready. "I'm just tired," I said, avoiding his gaze. "Can we talk tomorrow?" Ryan hesitated but nodded. The next morning, I woke up feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I couldn't avoid it any longer. Ryan had already left for work, and I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at my coffee cup, lost in thought. I decided to visit Jessica after school hours. We needed to talk, to figure out what to do next. When I arrived at her apartment, she opened the door with a look of both relief and hesitation. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly. "I wasn't sure if you wanted to see me again." "I don't know what I want," I admitted. "But we can't keep living in this limbo. It's tearing me apart." One evening, as we walked through the park, Ryan stopped and turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "Maybe it's about you, what you're searching for, what you're missing." Her words hit me like a wave. She was right. This wasn't just about her or Ryan. It was about me. Tears filled my eyes as I realized how lost I had been, how disconnected I felt from my own life. Jessica reached out and held my hand. "Whatever you decide, Claire, just promise me one thing." "What's that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Promise me you'll choose what makes you truly happy." I nodded, unable to speak. In that moment, I realized that I couldn't keep running from my feelings. When I left Jessica's apartment, I drove aimlessly for hours, trying to make sense of everything. By the time I got home, it was late. Ryan was sitting in the living room, waiting for me. "We need to talk, Claire," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I can't keep pretending everything is okay." I sat down across from him, my hands trembling. "You're right," I said. "We need to talk. About everything." For the first time, I opened up about how I'd been feeling, about the loneliness, the disconnect, and Jessica. Ryan's face was a mix of shock and pain. "Jessica? Ethan's teacher?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I admitted, tears streaming down my face. "I never meant for it to happen, Ryan. I'm so sorry." He was silent for a long time, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I don't know what to say," he finally said. "I don't either," I replied. "But I know we need to figure out where we go from here." The rest of the night was spent in painful honesty, both of us laying everything bare. By the end of it, we didn't have all the answers, but we knew one thing. We weren't ready to give up on each other. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. The days that followed were filled with tension, but also an unspoken determination to rebuild what was broken. Ryan and I began spending more time together, having conversations we hadn't had in years. It wasn't easy. The wounds were fresh, and the trust we had once shared felt fragile, almost non-existent. I stopped seeing Jessica entirely. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew it was necessary. One afternoon, while cleaning out a drawer, I found a note Jessica had written me. I hesitated before opening it. It read, "Claire, no matter where life takes us, I'll always cherish what we shared. Be happy." Tears filled my eyes as I read her words. It was a bittersweet reminder of what I had lost and what I still had. I folded the note carefully and placed it back in the drawer, a part of me unwilling to let it go completely. Ryan and I began seeing a counselor, someone who helped us navigate the complicated emotions we were both facing. Through those sessions, I learned how much I had taken Ryan for granted, how little I had communicated my own needs. I started leading a double life, devoted wife and mother by day, forbidden lover by night. And Ryan, in turn, admitted his own failings, the ways he had emotionally distanced himself without even realizing it. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, Ryan turned to me and asked, "Do you still love me?" The question caught me off guard, but the answer came easily. "Yes," I said, "I always have. I always will." He smiled, a small, tentative smile, but it was enough. It was a start, a new beginning for both of us. As the weeks turned into months, our relationship slowly began to heal. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Jessica was a memory now, a chapter in my life that had taught me about myself in ways I hadn't expected. I realized that what I had been searching for all along wasn't in her or in anyone else. It was within me. Ryan and I rediscovered parts of each other we thought we had lost. We learned to laugh again, to dream again. One night, as we tucked Ethan into bed, I looked at Ryan and felt a wave of gratitude. We weren't perfect. We never would be, but we were trying. And sometimes that's enough. To anyone listening, know this. Mistakes don't have to define you. They can teach you if you let them. And love, real love, is about choosing each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. This is my story, a story of mistakes, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bonds of family. And while it's far from perfect, it's mine. And for that, I'll always be grateful. As time went on, Ryan and I began building new memories, letting the past remain where it belonged. We went on family trips, took up new hobbies, and even started a weekly tradition of cooking dinner together. It was in these small, quiet moments that I felt the weight of my guilt begin to lift. Jessica's presence in my life was now a memory, but one that had changed me in profound ways. I no longer thought of her with longing or regret. Instead, I thought of her as a chapter that taught me strength. One evening, as Ryan and I sat on the porch, watching Ethan play in the yard, he reached for my hand. "Do you ever think about her?" He asked softly, his voice free of accusation, only curiosity. "I know," I replied, my voice barely audible. "But I don't know how to stop." "Sometimes," I admitted, turning to meet his gaze. "But not the way you might think." Ryan nodded, squeezing my hand gently. "It's strange, isn't it? How pain can teach us what we need to heal." I smiled at him, grateful for his understanding. "It's made us stronger, hasn't it?" I asked. The next time I saw Miss Hurst Jessica, as I had come to call her, I told her we needed to stop. "It has," he said firmly, "and I wouldn't trade what we have now for anything." And while the scars of our past would always remain, they were a testament to our resilience. To anyone listening, I hope our story reminds you that love isn't perfect. It's messy, flawed, and challenging, but it's also worth fighting for. Because when you choose love, you choose growth, forgiveness, and hope. This is my journey, a story of mistakes, redemption, and the power of second chances. And as Ryan and I move forward, I know one thing for certain, our story is far from over. Because life, love, and forgiveness are never easy, but they are always worth it. As time continued to pass, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this point. As the classroom emptied, we stood alone. The air between us was thick with tension. We started having more open conversations about our fears, desires, and the things we wanted to change. It was during one of these talks that Ryan admitted he'd felt neglected too, long before everything happened. "I didn't know how to say it," he confessed. "I thought you'd see it as criticism instead of a cry for help." His vulnerability moved me. For so long, I'd been focused on my own feelings, forgetting he had his own struggles. We decided to make changes, not drastic ones, but small steps to ensure we stayed connected. Date nights became a regular part of our routine, even if it was just sitting on the porch with a glass of wine. We learned to laugh again, to find joy in the little things, like cooking breakfast together on Sunday morning. And through it all, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for Ryan's patience, for our resilience, for the second chance. Jessica nodded and motioned for me to sit. "Claire, I've been thinking, maybe this isn't about us. Do you think we would have made it if none of this happened?" he asked, his voice quiet. I thought about it for a moment before replying, "I don't know. But I do know this made us who we are." He smiled, pulling me into a hug. "I wouldn't trade what we have now for anything," he said softly. As we stood there, surrounded by the sounds of the city, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Our journey had been anything but easy, but it was ours, a story of love, forgiveness, and rediscovery. To anyone listening, remember this. No relationship is perfect, but perfection isn't the goal. Growth is. And if you're willing to fight for it, to face the hard truths and embrace the messy moments, love will endure. Thank you for being a part of my story. I hope it inspires you to cherish the love in your own life, because in the end, love isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about learning, growing, and choosing each other every day. As the years went by, the lessons we learned from our struggles became the foundation of our life together. Ryan and I continued to prioritize each other, finding joy in the everyday moments that made our life uniquely ours. Ethan grew up surrounded by love and understanding, and I often marveled at the resilience of our little family. There were still reminders of the past memories that surfaced unexpectedly, bringing with them a mix of emotions. But those memories no longer held power over me. Instead, they served as a testament to how far we had come. One day, as I sorted through old photos, I found one of Jessica. It had been tucked away in a forgotten album. I stared at it for a long time, feeling a strange sense of gratitude. She had been a catalyst for change in my life. Ryan walked into the room and saw the photo in my hands. "What's that?" he asked curiously. "Just a piece of the past," I said, smiling softly. "A reminder of how far we've come." He sat beside me, placing his arm around my shoulders. "I wouldn't trade where we are now for anything," he said. "Neither would I replied. "The journey was messy, but it brought us here, and here is enough." We spent that evening reminiscing, flipping through photos and laughing at memories both good and bad. It reminded me that life is a collection of moments, some painful, some beautiful, but all meaningful. To anyone listening, I hope our story shows you that it's never too late to grow, to heal, and to love. Because even when the path is uncertain, even when mistakes are made, love has the power to endure. I froze, my heart pounding. "Just out with friends," I lied, avoiding his gaze. This is the story of my family, imperfect, resilient, and full of love. And it's a story that's still being written. Thank you for listening and for allowing me to share my journey. May your own story be just as meaningful. And remember, love isn't about finding perfection. It's about embracing the imperfections together. Here's to love, forgiveness, and the endless possibilities of a life built on hope and connection. Goodbye for now, and may your own journey be filled with growth, understanding, and love.